Also, if you need me to shut my door,
That's good.
I can do that too.
Say that one more time.
If you need me to shut my door, I can do that. It's a little windy outside, so I don't know if
Oh,
the
okay.
audio is.
I think it's fine. That's okay. Super stoked. So I have Marlena. Is that how you say like your full name?
Marlena.
Oh, Marlena. Okay, okay.
Mhm,
That's
yeah.
pretty. I like that.
Thank you.
But you go by Mar.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we know each other because my fiance Kiana and you two knew each other.
Yes.
Um, wait, I don't know how many years ago, whatever, but you guys like connected, whatever. And then yeah, I mean just like through her talking, like us getting to know each other, and then you guys connecting on Instagram sometimes, and then like your girl apparel. So like the connection is just through my fiance. But like it's awesome because she would always say you two would get along so well, and you guys would like just like your energy is like matches, and then meeting with you last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever, was like yeah,
Yeah,
I,
I
I love
agree. Yeah, super excited to meet in person.
yeah. So I just want to jump into your story because so in today's episode, we're gonna really dive into Mars' story with bodybuilding and things with like eating disorders, possibly body image issues, things like that. Like I just want, and I know some things, but I just kind of want us to just jump right into that. You can start wherever you want, maybe give a little background info about like what you do for a living, and then we can kind of just go from there.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I grew up there, started college there, and that's where a majority of my bodybuilding history happened, which we'll get into. But I'm now in North Carolina. I'm actually moving to Wilmington. I'm now in Boone. And I'm a personal trainer, and I was in school, but I dropped out last semester, so not in school anymore.
And so because what were you going to school for?
I had switched my major a lot. I had done like exercise science, nutrition, health psychology, and then I ended with this self-directed major that was on basically like performance coaching, was my focus, and then within that there was some like athletic performance and mindset psychological training for athletic performance. And so I was super interested in that stuff, and I still very much am. But I figured like there's not a specific program for it. I was creating it myself, and I was using like a library of information that I have without college, like without a university. And so I can just kind of do that learning on my own. Um,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, I do one on one personal training. And at my new job in Wilmington, I'll also be doing some like group fitness stuff. So
Awesome.
mm,
Awesome. Okay. So, and how old are you?
I'm 21.
21. Okay. This will be, I didn't, when you told me that, you just look older than what you are. But then just the way that like because I've seen you post on social media like your workouts and just like whatever, and like you started your own clothing line company, like that's things that people do, I feel like late a little bit later on in life, whereas you're just, which is super awesome. It's so cool to see. Like I love seeing younger people
Well,
like starting their business and stuff.
thank you. Yeah, we'll get into some of that stuff growing up and whatnot.
Heck
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Let's just
Okay.
start at the beginning.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. So I was a gymnast until I was 12 years old. And I played hockey for a couple years in there, just rec. But gymnastics was my like main core sport. I had tried soccer, I had tried softball, whatever else. And as many people know, within gymnastics, there's like a lot of disordered habits, whether it comes from coaching or just body image, whatnot. Dance is really similar with that. And so I believe that a lot of these things stemmed from that we'll get into later, stemmed from gymnastics. But anyways, so I did gymnastics until I was 12. I always really liked the fitness and conditioning aspect of it more so than like the actual gymnastics itself. Um, but I was super into it for years. I would like be doing flips in my backyard or whatever. My cousin was a gymnast too, and so we bonded over that. But yeah, so at 12 years old, I quit. I remember like waking up one day and literally being like, I don't really want to go to practice. And I told my mom, and she was like, all right, let's finish off this little package that we got, and then cool, you don't have to do it anymore. Um, and even before I quit gymnastics, I had started doing like, do you know what Blogilates is? She's like a
Yeah,
Pilates
I
YouTube
forgot
girl
about that,
from
but
like way
yes.
back in the day.
Yeah.
And so I would do like her workouts, or I'd find, I'm trying to think of other YouTube channels, but I'd pretty much like go in my basement and find Pilates or body weight workouts, probably from around the age of 8 or so. So my last like, so for a big portion of my gymnastics, I was also doing like extra conditioning just because I really liked the intensity of that. And I don't, sorry, go ahead.
So, okay, question. So you said that you were 8 years old when you were looking at you like YouTubers trying to find workouts for extra conditioning. And you said so at the last part here, you said that it was because you wanted that extra intensity. Was it because like you was it like related to body image, or was it related because you truly just loved the like grind of doing workouts?
So I think that at that time, those two things were still separated.
Okay.
I do have like really early memory of disordered thoughts with, I started weighing myself so young. I remember the scale that like my mom had like bought a new scale. And just for reference, like my parents are very healthy people. They are not, there's not a lot of like eating disorder behavior in there at all. They're very much balanced, active, but not like an almond mom, if you know that term.
Yes, I do.
So
Yep, yep.
so I don't think that this stuff stemmed from them, but there could have been some things that like exacerbated it, if that
How
makes
old were
sense.
you when you started like that part of like weighing yourself a lot?
I remember the scale, the youngest you could set the age to was 10, and I was at least a couple years younger than that because we had to set it up below what my age was.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
so I think that, like, going back to your question, I think that my body image stuff was separate from the actual workouts that I was doing for at
Yep.
least the first couple years of it. But I
Okay.
always like, I don't want to sound weird, but like I always really liked that like pain of working out, or just like that intensity and that feeling, and it's
Yeah.
something that I still like love.
Yep.
I think I loved that really young, and it
Yep.
started with.
Yep.
So, anyways, started getting super into fitness stuff. Let me turn off my ringer. um, and quit gymnastics at age 12. Got my first gym membership at a YMCA, and that was like the Blaisdell YMCA in Minneapolis. Like I grew up going there. And I remember going into the weight room and just starting. I had no idea what I was doing, but like picking up dumbbells and, okay, this feels cool, or like this feels cool.
Yeah.
And I already had a really good base of strength from gymnastics and just like body awareness. So I feel like I was able to pick up on uh, whether it was like form cues that I was learning or whatever I was finding online. I was able to like do things correctly pretty young, form wise, is what I mean.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so I was doing like some circuit workouts. I was probably still doing some Pilates stuff.
Yep.
But I started weightlifting, and that was what I really felt excited by. And I remember my dad telling me I was probably like, probably 12, was probably in the first year of lifting, like, people are going to tell you that girls shouldn't be strong or something like that, but like, you don't have to listen to them. And I was like, oh yeah, dad, like, I know I don't have to listen to them. Like, I like being strong. And like,
Yeah.
I remember like I started to get like capped delts, and I was like so excited about it.
Nice. That's awesome that for your dad to say that too.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, like they're super supportive,
Yep.
all that stuff. So anyway, so I'm getting to like every little detail here. Started that
Love
way.
it. That's okay.
Sweet. Probably about 6 months to a year later, I want to say like eighth grade, I switched to an LA Fitness in Uptown Minneapolis. It still exists. I've gone back a few times since then, which has been like, am I allowed to swear? Oh
Oh,
my.
yes. Yes.
So anyways, went to the LA Fitness, got a personal trainer, and I only worked with her for a couple months before she quit that job. But that was when I like truly started to understand, okay, like what is progressive overload? Like what are like how do I like what does push pull legs mean? Or like what is hypertrophy? Like these very basic but super foundational, like important terms
Mhm.
in weight training. Um, and I will say on the side, at this point, I like had this love for training and what then became bodybuilding. And I also had this, so like this was growing, and I also had body image issues growing. I also had obsession with my weight growing. I also had like diet, nutrition, BS
Yep.
being shoved in down my throat on social
Mhm.
media because like at that point there wasn't a lot of good information.
I was gonna say, like, did you like find your nutrition stuff from social media, or like how did you like take in that side of things?
Yeah, so definitely a combination. Also, I was vegetarian from age like 4 to
Okay.
17, and
By
vegan.
choice or like family?
So by choice, my sister was, my parents eat meat, um, and I was by choice until basically my first competition prep. Um, but with that, I found like, I don't know if you know who Ellen Fisher is or like Bonnie something. It's like these vegan YouTubers that, um, in my opinion, there's a lot of like disordered stuff
Hmm.
that came out
Yeah.
of that. But it was them and then like a lot of the OG bikini competitors. And so I started to find that side of thing, the competition bodybuilding stuff, when I was at LA Fitness. I ended up switching to a different location, and met a personal trainer there who I'm still in contact sometimes with today, which is like so
It's
crazy that this guy has known me since I was probably 14 at this point.
yeah.
But he is the one that really pushed me and really introduced me into competing, what bodybuilding is at its core, not just competition, but the like lifestyle and community of bodybuilding and that whole thing, that whole idea with it. And so I worked with him. I put on so much muscle that year. Like I was eating so much. I was not tracking my macros. Like I think I had before and then I had stopped. And
And
I was
how
just,
old are you at this point right now?
I want to say 14.
That is
Uh,
just wild. It's just getting into it so young.
yeah, 14 or 15. But I think
Okay.
like that was the year of like 14, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So um I, at this point, think that my eating disorder stuff had gotten a little bit better. I don't have a lot of memories of like um, obsession around food, but as this training stuff grew and I got so excited about bodybuilding, and now at this point is when like OG Amanda Bucci and like these bikini competitors that started making videos at that time, I got really into them and was like, oh, like what's this fun, competing thing. And at that point, I had also like, I think just because I was lifting, just because I was like in that environment a lot, like I was around a lot of people that were older than me, and not a lot of people knew how old I was. And I started getting a lot of attention for my body. And like I would get a lot of comments on it at the gym. And I think that that kind of, for a little bit of time, replaced the, uh, in a way, validation that I was getting from myself by restricting food, but now I was getting that from other people talking about my body, if that makes sense. And a lot of it,
So like it was like positive reinforcement to keep doing what you were doing? Like or what
yes,
explain that part a little more.
yeah, I'd say more inappropriate reinforcement. It was like good, it was like, oh, you look really good. It was like
Right.
positive things coming out of their mouth, but I was a child. And so
Right.
a lot of it was coming, like I said, from like older men. And that was just, I was
Got it.
starting to, become a sexual being and whatever. Like I
Yeah.
was going through puberty and everything.
Yep.
But a lot of that from both men and women, but especially men, was like comments on my body that at that time, like I hadn't really, before it was more like, oh my God, I feel so strong and like I love being muscular. And then I didn't know that it was like this kink thing, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Do you remember some of the comments that was said?
Oh God. Nothing specific, but just like just dudes stare. I mean,
Guys saying
so
stuff.
many women have experienced that of like
Yeah.
men staring at them in the gym and coming up to them and like making an appropriate comment, you know, or like
Yeah.
look really good in those leggings kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, like I just love bodybuilding, but like, okay,
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
Uh,
You were super excited about the bodybuilding part, being strong, and then like these older guys come in and just start saying,
and then it became the sexualized thing.
right. Yes. Okay.
So, anyways, that was I don't know what year it was, but I was 14, 15. Um, and that guy kind of like became he was not one of the creepy ones at all. He was always very good to me. Um, we had a really good friend named Ashley, and us were like a little family. We'd meal prep together, we would train together. He had a little gym that we would personal train at. At this time, I had also started like kind of training people under him. So putting people through workouts, whether it was his clients or like I would post something on Instagram about it and have people come in. So that was a really cool part where like I got mentored into personal training at that time too.
That's
Um, but yeah, so I had become really interested in competing. And at 15 and a half, 16, I had a falling out with that trainer who now we've made up and we're all good. But I had a falling out with him and found my first prep coach. And so this was a very like popular coach at the time in the area that I was in. And there was a big team and like I don't know if I want to like name drop, but
you can if you want, but you don't have to.
okay. I mean, I don't really know them anymore. It was Team Pokey was like the name of the thing, and it was
Okay.
this huge deal like in the northern suburbs of Minneapolis. And he had a bunch of clients, competition clients. I had met someone that I'm good friends with now, Christy, who's still a competitor, working with a different coach too. But now I had this family of competitors, and I at this point was like in love with bodybuilding. I was like, I'm competing as soon as possible.
Mhm.
I had learned about the different categories. I'd fallen in love with figure. Are you familiar with the different
Yeah,
categories?
like I know the categories. I don't know much about each of them really, but I've like heard the names.
So bikini is very like slim, mostly about like capped delts and booty. Figure is like still supposed to be a feminine look, but a lot more muscularity. You have an X frame, so it's um, big quads, shoulders, lats, looking like that. And then
Oh,
physique is like jacked, like bodybuilding women, if that makes sense. So I had fallen in love with the look of figure. I was super excited about it. I'm gonna be honest and say that this coach was like not equipped to be a bodybuilding coach. Definitely did not, especially like, I mean, frankly, I don't think that anyone at that age should be prepping for a show. You know, you're like going through a lot of development that is
mhm.
not happening properly just with dieting and everything. Um, but he was extremely over prescribing of cardio. I was taking like I wasn't taking any steroids, but I was taking like fat burner pills, yohimbine, doing over 2.5 hours of cardio a day, an hour of that was fasted, just like ridiculous things.
Wow.
And pretty soon into working with him, I like a lot of my eating disorder stuff had come back and I was tracking my macros,
At
but
15, were you like 15 at this point?
that is like late 15 because I competed when I was 16.
Okay.
So
And then when you say like eating disorders came back, when was the first time, like the first round you felt? Was that like during gymnastics or was that like
yeah,
okay.
gymnastics into bodybuilding. And then like there was a period of time when I was lifting but feeling really good
Yeah.
um, with that stuff and like excited to eat kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then it became it kind of morphed from what it was before, which was mostly like diet culture stuff messing with my head and restriction into res- binging and restricting and then
Right.
also protein. So it turned into bulimia, um, which lasted for quite a while, which I'll explain too.
Yes, we
Um,
want to go into that.
but yeah, so that's when that started, and I would follow my macros for a few days and then eat a shit ton of trail mix and then purge. And so it was like this constant cycle of, okay, tomorrow's going to be better, which I know is like so common with that.
Yeah.
Uh, and I would like go to sleep so hungry one night and be so excited about it and be like, yes, I made it to bed without eating, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yep.
And my whole first prep was like that. And so when I competed, like I remember the day before I was so excited and I was like, I hadn't really, I wasn't prepping properly. So I wasn't as, like lean as I should have been, or I was not show ready. I was also so not in the mindset to be a bodybuilder and to prep. I had so many of these obviously underlying issues that I've never healed. And I also never said a word about it to anyone. So at this point, it was still like, I I had known that I had issues since I was like literally as long as I could remember, but I had a really hard time being honest with myself, and that's something that I really want to talk about once we get to where I'm at now. But I had no honesty with myself, and I would tell myself that I was doing things, or I would tell other people that I was doing things that I like totally was not doing. I was
I did
not.
that. I did that in high school and a little bit in college, but I remember high school, I did that exact same thing.
Yeah, and it's scary to like I felt so disconnected from myself, and that lasted for quite a while. To where like there was this ideal that I really wanted to be, and this was like the people that I looked up to, like Christina. I looked up to her so much. She was such a good bodybuilder. Like I went to her shows. Like Mike, another guy that I'm still great friends with. He was like such an idol for me. He was such a, stuck to his plan and looked great on stage and whatever. And like I wanted to be this perfect bodybuilder so bad, but I had all of these like just there was so much lying to myself involved that I was not in a place at all where I could do
What
that.
were some of the things that you were lying to yourself about? Like if you can remember those
I would
thoughts.
like convince myself that I was following my plan kind of thing. But it was like I was eating so much stuff off of plan, and then I would justify the purging
Yeah.
and say
Mm-hmm.
like, oh well, like this will just be my last time, like it's okay, like it's just like this one meal, I'm fine, and then I'll get right back on my macros and I'll be good. And like and then um my training and my cardio I was always like so consistent with. Genuinely, it was the diet that obviously I had diet issues in the past and they had just like come back worse.
Yep.
um, so a lot of it had to do with the dieting part. Um, and yeah, I'd say like that was the biggest thing, where I would just try to justify my actions and convince myself that I was doing these things in a, or I would justify I guess just like the big thing.
Yeah, that's because like when I did in high school, a little bit in college too, I totally would justify it. Or like people would say stuff about it, and I'm like, I'm just eating super healthy and I'm working out a lot because I'm in cross country and dance and I want to go on runs by myself. And like, so it's like I would like say those things, but fully like inside knowing, but also telling myself that that's not true too. Like I knew, but also I didn't want that. It's like I didn't accept it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the way that I've kind of, I don't know if this analogy is really going to make sense outside of my brain, but I think of it as like me with a mask and then raw me. And like me with a mask was the person that I portrayed myself as. And I was so excited to be like the youngest one in the room, and like I wanted to be like the youngest IFBB pro, and like, and I like got off to being this like child prodigy kind of thing in
Yep.
bodybuilding. When then in reality it was like, oh, I'm eating off plan so much, I'm not following this. I also have like binge and purge issues. Like there were it's like me with a mask was this like person that I wanted to be, and I convinced myself that I was becoming. And then the other side was this child with a lot of underlying issues.
Yep, that makes sense. At the time, did you believe that other competitors went through that and you thought it was normal, or did you know that that wasn't normal? Like, what was your thought process there?
I knew that. Okay, so I think that I kind of separated competitors into these two different categories. The one category was the who I wanted to be, which was like the people that looked good on stage, basically, and like the people that I really looked up to or looked good. You know what I mean? Like traditionally show ready. And then the other side was like where I knew I was, but I was trying to convince myself otherwise, of like the people that couldn't do it, that weren't strong enough to um get peeled, or like couldn't deal with their hunger, or dealt with these eating disorder things. And it was like this pile of people that was less than this.
Okay, yep.
And so I wanted so badly to be this, but like I had so many things that I had to do before I could.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense.
Like I knew that there were people that, because I truly do believe that there are competitors that don't have eating disorders, but
Yeah, 100%.
I also believe that it's really common, and it's
100%, yes.
okay that not everyone can be this other side.
Right. Yes, that's a good thing to point out. I'm gonna pause 1 second. I'm gonna just plug my computer in
Okay.
because I totally forgot to do that. Okay, we're back.
Okay. Yeah. So first competition, I was had a lot of muscle just because I had been lifting for a while at that point, but like I said, I was not conditioned. Um, but I remember that day being so excited. I loved being on stage. Oh my god. I'm like I loved it. I loved posing. I loved doing my little like individual one. I remember that feeling of being up there and just being like, oh fuck yeah, like I'm supposed to be here even though like whatever else was going on. But
Yep.
that was so exciting. My posing coach at the time was an incredible person named Alicia, who
Oh yeah, okay. I knew you had worked
I,
with her, but I didn't know like at what point in your story you did. So okay.
yeah, so she was my posing coach, and I actually introduced Kiana to her.
Yes, that's right. Okay.
So I was working with her with posing during that first competition, and I was telling her some of these things that my coach was having me do, like this insane amount of cardio, probably like
Yep.
20 hours a week of cardio. Um, and I never mentioned eating disorder things up until this point, but I like was telling her about the protocol that he was having me do, which was obviously adding
She's
to that.
probably like, hell no, what are you
He was
doing?
like, hell no, exactly. And her boyfriend Dennis is also incredible. He's both of them are like, oh man, there's so much more to this story. I hope this isn't too long, but yeah. So they're like super important people to me. Um, I ended up telling her about things, and she was just like, Marlena, like I don't want to talk poorly of any other coaches. I understand that everyone has their own theories and whatnot, but like this is not okay. Like that's not okay to be doing what you were doing. And so I started working with her, and I'd known that she was a prep coach, but like I said, I'd been working with Patrick, and then yeah, so competed with him for the first time. So I started working with her. Immediately, we took away all my cardio. Immediately, we upped my food. I did not gain a million pounds like I thought I was going to. I think I was like 17 at this point, and I got on program with her. I still was having these issues, these eating disorder issues, this body image stuff. After my show, I had like gained a little bit of weight, but not a ton, I don't think. And just, it was these two sides of like, I'm loving my training, and and I love being in the gym and this, and I love the bodybuilding culture, blah, 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 but I also have all these other issues that I'm not really talking about, and I'm kind of, okay, I know they exist, but I'm gonna shove them away.
Yep.
Um, I prepped with her. I can't, okay, so I started prep, I believe, March or April of 2020. So it was like like peak COVID time, or I guess a little bit, yeah, basically peak COVID time. And we didn't really know when I was going to compete. I think originally it was going to be August, and then it got pushed back and pushed back because shows were being canceled. Um, and I like got pretty lean. I looked 1,000 times better than I did my first show. I'd really like put on a lot of muscle, and um, I think I like lost 30 something pounds during that prep. I think I competed at like 126, and I had started at probably 155 or so. So I had lost a lot of weight. I was pretty lean. I wasn't like quite stage lean when I competed, but I was so convinced that I like had another 20 pounds to lose. My body dysmorphia that prep was absolutely insane. Like, I looking back at pictures now, I'm like, girl, you were shredded, but like I
Yeah.
did not think I was shredded at all. But that was my first time feeling like I mean, I still had like some minor binges, and you know, there was still eating disorder stuff there, but it was my first time doing a successful prep and a successful cut. And so I felt like I'd finally, like, not completely, but to a certain extent, been able to follow plan, and like did, you know, my training and everything. But I also wanted to be pushed harder and harder and harder because I wanted to be leaner.
And
Um,
were you restricting and binging at this point still? Like you were still doing some of that, or was
uh,
that less?
it was a lot less, but I think like there were times when I was eating off plan kind of thing.
Mhm.
But it was definitely less than the first one. Um, but I also do believe that even though I was on plan more, I was still not at all, and I had not healed from
Right.
disordered stuff. So yeah,
Yep.
there was still a lot there,
Yep.
with that. So, November 2020, no, October 2020, I competed in figure again. At that point, I like moved out of my parents for the first time. I was 18. I was reading this book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Have you ever
Yes. I haven't read it, but I've read
a
um
new
A New
Earth?
Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. So that book, like, man, I call that book my Bible. I am not a religious person in any sense, but like that book did something to me.
Yeah.
um, and I felt like for the first time I had woken up from this. I was able to have full body awareness and be aware of my thoughts instead of being my thoughts. And that
Yeah. Mhm.
idea of the separation from your mind, and
I just
I
got massive goosebumps. Holy shit. The way you just described that is like I couldn't have said any better. I totally know what you mean.
it was just like I'm getting shivers now too thinking about it, and I do every time I talk about this because that experience, like, just a little side story. The first time that I was able to get that feeling of that separation, I remember I was wearing white nail polish, and every morning I would like go and get my steps in because I had a step goal on prep. And I remember like taking because I'd read in the morning and then I'd go for a walk. And I remember like trying to apply what I read about on my walk, and then like be able to expand that feeling of living in the now, and
Yeah.
of awareness. And I was watching my nail polish every single day, like chip away, chip away, chip away, and like looking at my nails was the first time that I was truly in the now and not um consumed by my thought and believing that my thought was all that I was, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. I
Yep.
remember like I'd had these flashbacks when that would happen to being a child dealing with insomnia. And when I held my breath, I was able to stop my anxious thoughts. And like another thing is I had dealt with anxiety this whole time. That was a big piece too. But I remember like when I held my breath when I was probably 6, 7 years old at night, my thoughts would go away and I was completely calm and I was so at peace and silent and like, and then I'd breathe again and then my thoughts would come back. And so I made that connection that, oh, at that point, like I was soothing myself by being in the now, but I didn't know how to do it while I was breathing, like I didn't know what I was doing. So I
Yep.
didn't know how to hold on to it. So reading that book during prep really opened my eyes up to what was going on with my body and what I had done the last, at that point, 6 years. And even before that, and like been like, oh my God, like this isn't, you're not okay, kind of thing. Like this is really an obsession. And this is, I was able, again, I was able to separate myself from all of this whole idea that I had of my life. And
Yep.
so I competed, but I was at this point, I was still like very much in the bodybuilding mindset. Like I wanted to still do it, but I had just realized, oh, okay, I think we need to heal some things after this competition before we can get back into it. Um, so competed October, competed November. 5 days after my show, I was like, I need to get out of this environment. That whole uh feeling and learning that I had from that book, I was becoming like, it was kind of consuming me, but in a really good way, but also in a way that was like, I need to do something about this because I don't know. This is my whole identity. I don't have a social life. I was 18. I was like, all I cared about was being a good bodybuilder. And so I got in my car, met my friend from Toronto who was in like an internet COVID buddy, and we met in Wilmington, in North Carolina. And so I drove there, like packed up my stuff. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks or the rest of my life. Like, I didn't know. And met her, immediately clicked. She's my best friend of all time. I love her to death. Her name is Sela. I love you. And she was a huge impact in that next part of my life. So, okay, let me pause for a second. So at this point, yeah, I just competed. I was still very lean. I was still in the 120s. I'm 5'3", but like that weight for me is so low. To
Mhm.
I just yeah. So I pretty much immediately after I moved what could have been a trip to North Carolina, um, almost immediately stopped checking in with my coach. And so Alicia and I hadn't really talked. I think I'd maybe said something about needing a week to just be where I was, but I never told her what was going on. I never told her about the eating disorder stuff. I didn't tell her about the book and like what I was realizing about myself. I just like stopped checking in, and was telling Sela about all of this body stuff. The one thing I wasn't telling her about was the bulimia. She had known that there was a lot of disorder there, but like I hadn't told her about that. Um, but she was a huge influence in my, at that point, quitting of bodybuilding. And like,
Why? What did she like? What did she do? What did she say?
man, I can't even remember exact words, but just like recognize, based on what I told her, like recognize that what was happening was not okay and that it wasn't healthy at all, and that there was more to me as a human than being a bodybuilder. and
Yeah.
and just circling back to what I said about at LA Fitness with like the attention that I was getting from my body, that grew more and more, and that became such a integral part of my my happiness and my validation of myself.
Mhm.
And I convinced myself that like if I wasn't a bodybuilder, I was nothing. And if I wasn't like there was no other part of me. Oh, also like probably a year and a half before I moved, I had come out, and like that was a whole other thing that we'll get into later too. But that was like the only other piece of my life that I felt like I had to just like, if someone asked me like at that point, like, Marlena, who are you? I was bodybuilder and I was gay. And like that was it. you know? So um that was really weird to like not have any identity, basically.
Yeah. So she
Uh,
helped you realize that you had an identity like outside of
yes,
bodybuilding.
yes, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
There, you are more of a human, like, whatever, but like this thing, maybe you can come back to it later, but right now is not good for you. And
Right.
so it was very much like she asked me questions that I was able to come to the conclusion of. She wasn't telling me what I was. So it was really just like such a beautiful friendship and exactly what I needed at that time. And I was I was in Wilmington, and from late or December when I moved till March, maybe late March, I was finally like feeding myself and truly eating to satisfaction. I didn't do any kind of reverse out of my competition, which was like not good at all. I put on over 40 pounds in 2.5 months. I was eating like really healthy food, but I just so much of it.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with post-starvation hyperphagia?
No.
So she also like showed me this research on this, which is I'm sure you'll recognize the pattern of it. It's essentially that like when you're okay, you like start at a certain weight, body fat percentage, you dip way down, extreme caloric restriction. Like it's what a bodybuilding prep is. Your body's basically going through an extreme eating disorder. I mean, that's just
Right.
like
Yeah.
physiologically that's what's happening. And
Yeah.
so and when you come up you can have extreme hunger, feeling out of control, like binging tendencies, but it's your body's response. So like
Right.
and body fat spikes up higher than it was when you first started, and then over time as your body starts to trust you again, whatever weight will come down, flatten out approximately to where you started. So it's this like
Yep.
start, dip down, go way up, slowly come down.
Yep. So like when you started, when that happened, was there any fear behind eating more food, or what, like, were you truly like just hungrier? So you just did, or was it because you knew you had that awareness about your body? So you kind of let go of the restriction?
Yeah. So I think okay, so it's really, I feel like I had so many different things and I was being told a million different things by different people. I mean, like, I had also started seeing a dietitian as part of this. But I feel like it was this combination. It was like, okay, so now at this point, I'd kind of been in this like fuck bodybuilding mindset after,
Right.
like those few months was like, fuck the gym, fuck bodybuilding. I can't, like, that's behind me. I'm never doing it again, kind of thing. I was like mad at it and I blamed it, which we'll get back to. I don't anymore. But um, I wanted to heal. I also didn't want to be big. And I would eat so much and I was gaining so much weight, but I was also like purging a lot. And like that was a huge, like that was probably the worst, like those few months was probably the worst of the bulimia that I had ever had. And yeah, so I was just like eating probably 6,000 calories a day. It never felt, what was interesting though is it never felt at this point like out of control. It just felt like I was so hungry that I had to, but then the purging is what felt out of control. That it
Yeah.
was almost that I had trained my body that every time I eat, now you throw it up, basically. And
Yep.
so um I yeah, so from 20 that was like 2021.
Had you told Alicia by this point, or you
No,
just like, okay.
no, we hadn't talked at all. And next part of this is that I wrote her a letter and I sent it to her in the mail. And that'll come back later, but I never got a response. but I think I had actually asked Kiana if she had gotten it, and she asked her and said, yes, I'm not ready to respond, or something along those lines.
Mhm.
So I did end up writing her a letter explaining everything. I don't know if I included the purging part of that. That was something that I was like so shameful of. And I also like hadn't told Sela about that. But yeah, so
Why
I
do you think you were shameful of that?
why do I think I was shameful of that? Probably, I think that in my mind that was like lowest level. That like I had hit this low level of okay, I can't stick to a diet, I can't stick to a reverse, I can't stick to this. I'm eating so much that I know I need to eat, and I'm feeling so fucking hungry because I've just been restricting myself on and off for my whole life, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah,
Was there a
I
little bit of like embarrassment behind that? Like because you felt like it was the lowest thing and yeah.
and I remember the moment that like I felt like I had hit rock bottom with this was I was at the doctor and I was getting blood work done. And I knew that I was like bigger at this point, but I also like truthfully like I mean my highest weight was 166, which is like very heavy for me, but I wasn't it's like I wasn't as big as I thought I was, you know, and like I just looked like jacked and juicy, kind of.
Yeah.
However that I put it, with like a little extra juice, but like I needed to have that, you know.
Yeah.
So um, I remember being at the doctor getting my blood work done, and I said like, do not like cross out my weight. I cannot see my weight. I did a blind weigh in. I like turned around on the scale, and the doctor looked at me dead in the eyes, gave me my paper straight out of the printing machine with my weight on it, and I saw 166, which like I wrote that was a whole thing. Like I wrote a whole review on that
What the
doctor.
fuck? Like literally what the fuck?
Yeah, yeah. And I remember getting it, looking up and being like, I told you to cross it out. And I started bawling. And like, yeah, crazy. I know.
Did he
That
say anything after that?
was I got no response, but I did a whole review. I like contacted the whole medical center thing, everything. I was
Good.
so anyways, I that was my like peak weight. Started I didn't really know what to do in the gym at that point because I know I didn't want to be bigger. I wanted to be, you know, like I wanted to lose weight, but I also knew that I couldn't restrict myself because and obviously, oh my god, on a whole other part of this was like losing my period for a super long time. Even
Oh,
at my
yep.
peak weight, I hadn't had gotten my period back, which was just like fascinating to me and how our bodies do that. But
Yep.
I eventually had gotten it back and like started to feel a little healthier. I started to move more. I got into CrossFit for a while. Um, I was at this gym called Reignited, which is like amazing people. I've met some great people. I'm actually moving in with two that go there.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
but I just was not ready to be in the fitness environment again. I think I
Yep.
still had a lot of healing to do and a lot of time away. So I would just, Sela and I would go on a lot of walks, or I'd go to the beach and just like run around and have fun and like find my body again and yeah, at this time I'd done like a lot more digging into kind of my spirituality and like spiritual health and like taking lessons from that book and then reading more. I read this book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural, which like I have a
Oh,
lot of opinions about. I think like there's some really great nuggets in there. I think there's also some that's like I don't know how much I believe it, you know. But
mhm.
I started getting really into meditation, and I would go to yoga with my friend Kat, and like just more like what I'd consider wellness than fitness.
Yep.
Um, and slowly started going to CrossFit classes sometimes, but I wasn't strict on myself about it. Uh, July 2021, I moved to Boone, which is where I am right now for another week and a half. um, and I joined this gym called CrossFit Postal. and was feeling really like healthier about my relationship to exercise. I the whole time like loved training, but I just didn't really know what to do after bodybuilding because I didn't want to like do more hypertrophy basically. Um, and I'd also been seeing that dietitian. I felt like my relationship with food was a lot better. I was just focused on like, I don't know, eating well.
And you weren't purging anymore?
I was up until, oh my god, it's been so long now. My okay, that's another little side story.
Okay.
Also, let me know if I need to hurry it up. I don't know.
So I want to share, I want you to like, I want us to go through everything, but I have another like meeting with someone at 3:30, which is what? So it's almost 3 here now.
Okay, perfect. That's great.
Okay.
There's not as many like details in the last couple of years, so it's good.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was eating a lot. I was eating well. I think like some of the weight had come off, not a lot, and I wasn't like super. I wasn't restrictive about it. It had just my hunger cues had started to level off, whatever. Um, so first few months in Boone, I was still purging, and then I finally told my sister, who was the first person that I had told about it. And she, not to get into her stuff, but had dealt with some similar eating disorder things in a very different way. Nothing was, I don't come from a bodybuilding family, so it wasn't related to that. But she basically told me like the dangers of purging, which I had never known about. And it was basically like some kind of esophagus issue, and then also like every time, I don't know if this is true or not, but like some doctor had told me that every time, I don't remember if it was the dietitian that I was seeing or someone else, but like every time you purge, like there's a chance of basically dying, which like I don't remember what how it was said, but something along those lines.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so my sister was like, Marlena, like I understand what you're going through. Here are a few different things that happen when you purge. You have to fucking stop. And so October of that year was my last time ever purging. And like still to this day, I haven't. And I pretty much immediately after I heard those things was like, oh fuck, like that's not even an option anymore.
That
I'm
made you that those like knowing that made you just completely
It
stop.
made me completely stop. And I knew that I had needed something to like, you're done,
Yeah.
kind of,
Mhm.
you know? So yeah, so I had completely stopped. I told her about it as the first person I'd ever told that I purged, whatever. And that was like clean, no more. I still had a lot of like body dysmorphia kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My eating disorder, I'd say, was a lot better, but like that dysmorphia part was still very much there. Um, I'm gonna kind of skip forward a little bit. That whole from like that would have been October 21 until this past summer. I was like in and out of CrossFit a lot. There were some like weird things that happened at that gym. I'm not even gonna go there, but uh, I was like very much again diving deeper into this whole idea of my identity, myself, who am I outside of being an athlete, um, and even erasing this. I mean, this is a whole like idea in that book and in a lot of spiritual practice and lesson that like I am not anything, I am just what I am, and then
Mhm.
I fill in the blanks. And that idea really helped me disconnect myself from who I was as a bodybuilder before.
Mhm.
And now I felt like I'd kind of not completely gotten there, but I had felt like almost like I felt like a rebirth was coming
Yeah.
of who
Yep.
I
Yep.
felt really cool. And so where am I? Yeah. So this past summer, I was so into CrossFit. I was working actually with a nutrition coach at this point. I hadn't tracked for a while, and we brought my calories way up. I was training like so much, but but it felt healthy, and it felt like I'm just training for performance and as an athlete, and like I want to compete. Um, but I also was getting really injured, and I also was like extremely fatigued and like dizzy a lot and just like had these weird symptoms that I couldn't really explain. I was drinking a lot of caffeine too, which had been an issue previously, but I'd kind of come back and I was drinking like a lot of coffee and energy drinks. Um, and I was going to do the Wadapalooza qualifiers, which is, are you familiar with Wadapalooza? It's like
Oh, no.
it's a big CrossFit competition in Florida.
Okay.
So I was actually going to do it with Marissa, who I'm moving in with. And I had this back injury and just like all these things. And I just like my body, like I was so excited about training, but my body just felt like shit, honestly. And I
Yeah.
said, hey, I can't do this. I need to figure out what's going on with me. Like, I don't know if this is leftover stuff from bodybuilding or if it was came on because of the amount of training that I was doing. I have no idea. But I pretty much went cold turkey, stopped training from October until of this past year until January, February. And I like in there had, you know, moved a little bit or I'd go in and like hop on a bike, but I really chilled out. It was that whole period of time was honestly kind of a blur. I was, you know, just like eating intuitively, whatever. Um, did one really hard workout. Oh, my injuries were starting to feel better. I was feeling energy coming back, but I was still like having a lot of those weird symptoms. One of them was really high anxiety that I didn't really understand. And I was still drinking a lot of caffeine during this time. And so I remember doing one really hard workout in February and completely like all of my symptoms came back. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, why? Like, one Metcon is going to do this to me? Like, that's something's not right. So that was about 3 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. And since then, I had like kind of gotten back into training a little bit, but things had not felt right. And I talked to this wonderful person, at Column, who's a nutrition coach. I just had like a consult with her, and she had mentioned caffeine being um, really bad for like, or if you're dealing with other hormonal issues, especially drinking black coffee on an empty stomach, like it's just not good. And side note, I'd also had a Dutch test, a hormone test done in October, and it showed super low hormone output. So that was like my final straw of like, okay, I need to chill and not train right now. So,
Yep.
anyways, only about a month ago, I stopped drinking caffeine in the morning, and I only have like a little bit mid afternoon, and night and day difference with
Wow, really?
and I also, which I want to talk about a little bit, have gotten back into hypertrophy bodybuilding training. Just to touch on the caffeine thing a little bit more, I have I have not had this much energy in years. My chronic pain that I was dealing with a lot of like weird joint pain, injuries all the time. I mean, it's not perfect, but like shockingly better than it was
Wow.
ago. And I was taking like all kinds of supplements and whatnot, like ashwagandha and just like herbal things, and nothing made nearly as much of a difference as cutting my caffeine. And like I'm such a firm believer now that like if you are dealing with any kind of chronic fatigue, chronic pain, sleeping issues, anything of that, if there is something unexplained, digestive issues, oh my god, I've had those my whole life. Like it's so much better now. I say like cut your caffeine and see
Yeah.
what
How much were you drinking before and then?
even that much at that point. I was drinking a ton when I was like in bodybuilding. I was drinking a
Yeah.
ton last summer, but I was only having probably 2 cups a day, 2 cups of coffee a day.
Even okay, so 2 cups of coffee for a while, and then even, like I mean, that's not a lot for most people, like, most people have, like, pre-workout, coffee in the morning, coffee in the afternoon, like, all these things, caffeine and other things they don't realize.
Yeah.
So,
I was
yeah,
having a
so you
cup
just cut it out.
I was having a cup in the morning and a cup early afternoon, mid-afternoon, and, like, I do decaf in the morning now, and then I have a small cup around, like, 1 or 2, and it immediately changed. And, like, I was really anxious about cutting it out because I was, like, kinda dependent on it for digestion, but, I just my body got used to it and, like, yeah, so that's completely changed. Where I'm at now, in terms of all that stuff is I feel like I am coming back into what you could consider the bodybuilding space in like a whole different way.
Mm.
So how do I even start? Like the last couple of years in Boone, I just felt like I did so much. I didn't love being here, just a small town, whatever. But I do feel like I've really come into my own body and like been able to reconnect with myself and like who am like what am I and like where do I come from? You know, just like these
A
questions of like
lot of, like,
what
inner growth is what it sounds like.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like I also had the realization probably about a year ago now of like, oh wait, I don't want to blame the sport of bodybuilding for what I went through. Like I had all of these underlying issues that like I feel so bad for myself as a child. You know, like I hate that I had to go through those things as such a young person. But for so long I tried to find this like band-aid to um or something to blame when like there's nothing to blame for it. I just that's what happened with
Yep.
my childhood and I took that route and bodybuilding exacerbated my issues, but bodybuilding was not the culprit of them. And so
Right.
I now like I'm feeling this new like sense of like a pull back towards it, but in a really healthy, non-disordered way. And there have been
Yep.
yesterday I was driving and I was like, why don't I feel like I want to ab check myself this week? I don't feel like I have to body check myself all the time. I don't feel like I have to um obsess like I'm not obsessing over my food. I'm not obsessing
Yep.
over my training. If I didn't have a great workout, it's like I'm moving on the next day. But
Yeah.
I feel like I'm honestly making more progress in the gym in the last month than I did in 3 months before. And like I I feel like a new I use that word like reborn before and I
Yep.
really feel like I'm like I'm being or I've just evolved into this this different version of a bodybuilder, whatever you want to call it. Like I I went through all that stuff growing up. I did a lot of inner work and healing and a lot of therapy for it and dietitian and whatever work. And I now feel like that side of me in the fitness space is so behind me and I kind of want to like yeah, I don't know. I'm just like
Try it again, maybe?
like I'm just excited again and I don't feel like I have it's like I when I started going back to like a traditional gym, this was literally just a month ago, instead of the CrossFit gym, like I told myself I was like if I catch myself having these thoughts like one it's okay because it's a process and also I will step back and I promised myself I was like if I'm going to have disordered thoughts, I'm going to step back and I haven't had them and it's like so cool to be able to do this thing that like I've been passionate about for so long, but I just felt like at that time in my I kind of call it like bodybuilding season 1 and now bodybuilding season 2 like
Yeah.
one like there were just so many things that were not healed yet and I had to um understand before I could come back to it and I felt like
Yep.
the last few years since I competed last like I've been able to, oh man, there's this quote that I actually got when I first moved to North Carolina on a little piece of paper, and I forgot who it's by, but it's something like, if you put the questions out there and you don't try to search for the answers will come to you. But if you try to obsess over the answers, then that's how you're going to live, instead of
Yeah.
to just flow into yourself. And like, I felt like the last few years, I put the questions out there. Okay, where did this come from? Why do these issues still exist? Like, all these different questions, and I feel like they've slowly been answered, and now I'm able to be at peace with that in the past, and now slowly move on. And like, and I don't know if I'll ever compete again, honestly, probably not. I feel like I'm bodybuilding for the love of bodybuilding and training for the love
Yeah.
of training. um I don't know if I want to open that up again. If I do, I'll probably be 30 at that time, like, I don't want to for a long time if I ever do. But I'm really enjoying being back in this environment and space, um, with like in a new light, and that sounds
Yeah.
kind of, it's like how it feels.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Like you went, I mean, I think that we go through things for a reason, and like you went through stuff at such a young age, but like you said, like you really evolved. Like you went through, you had all that, there was a lot of stuff going on, but you push on to the side, but then it's like, okay, you kind of figured out the root like causes or the root issues, whatever is going on, took a step back, took some time away, and then it's like you were reborn. You like had so much growth in that time, and like to now where you're excited about something that you once were excited about, in like you said, in like in a new light. Yeah, I mean, I just think that it's like so two questions. I sometimes I have like 3 or 4 thoughts coming to my mind, and it's like I can't speak. But I was gonna ask you, what would be like some red flags? Like, what are some, have any red flags come up? Like thoughts? What were they? What would they be? And how do you know how you would approach that? Like, what would you do?
I like that question. So I'm gonna integrate this into something that I said I wanted to come back to. I knew that I was not being honest with myself, and I feel like I visualize things in my head in a way, and then I try to explain them in words, and it doesn't really make sense. But it's like, in the back of my head, I knew that I had these disordered patterns, and I knew that they were disordered because it was obsessive. And so I think that if a red flag for me would be, um, if you are extremely meticulous about, like, if okay, see, it's hard because like during a body, I'm gonna say not being a bodybuilder, because bodybuilding prep is very different than being in fitness world in general. Fitness world in general, if you are like obsessing over each gram, and like you are not, if you track macros and you're not zeroing out your macros at the end of the day, um and obsessing about it, like, that to me is a red flag. Or it could be the same thing with um training and cardio. It's like, if you are obsessive about it, that is a huge red
And
flag.
I feel like that has become normalized. It's
Yeah,
normal to obsess about those things. It's normal to not want to take a day off. It's normal to like not prioritize sleep. Like all those things are normalized, but that's not normal. That is disordered.
exactly. And it's not, and so many people then will make the argument, which I've heard way too much online, of like, well, then you're just not disciplined. I'm like,
That's bullshit.
discipline is such a different thing.
Yeah.
Discipline is in my mind, like, the ability to adapt to, I mean, that's part of discipline to me, is that, and those are things that I used to write every single day in my journal, discipline, dedication, drive, all throughout my disorder. That started when I was probably 15 years old. I was, one, not being disciplined. I was dedicated to being something that I literally could not be at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And sure, I had drive, but like, yeah. So I would say, to answer your question, like, being extremely meticulous about things, red flag. Um, body checking. Oh my God, this one is huge for me. Is that
Yeah.
it is so normalized. There's so many like memes and TikToks and whatever about like checking yourself out in every reflection, like the car reflection. But that when body checking becomes obsessive, oh my God, huge red flag.
Yeah.
Um, it's so interesting for me now to like be back in the gym and is so excited about my training and bodybuilding and stuff and not I have like a mirror right there and if this was 3 years ago, every single time I walked past it, I would like lift up my shirt or I would flex or something to be like, is it still there? And it's like, of course it's still there. But
Yeah.
body checking is a huge red flag in my mind.
Yep.
It's a different story when you're at the gym and working out, you got pumped, or like sometimes you want to look at yourself cool, but that is huge for me.
Yeah.
Um, and then being like it's hard to I don't know how to word this, but I'm going to kind of talk about the opposite side of it of like be brutally honest with yourself because like for so many years I was lying to myself and therefore I was lying to other people about what I was doing and I felt like I kept digging myself deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into this hole of disorder and into to the point where like I said I was justifying things my
Mhm.
actions and I was just so dishonest in so many ways and I feel like for the first time in my life the last 6 months I have like I'll be like am I being honest about this? Oh no I'm not. All right, let's reflect here what's going on kind of thing. Why
Yep.
do I feel the need to lie to myself right now? Why do like honestly the last month and a half I haven't had any thoughts of that kind which is really cool and like exciting to me.
Yeah.
um the one other thing I want to say about the caffeine thing is that my anxiety I've considered going on medication many times. Cutting out my caffeine completely changed my anxiety. But
Yep.
that goes again, that connects back to the honesty thing that like I I just that is one. So if you know, because sometimes the reason why I didn't know how to articulate this as like a red flag is because a lot of the times it's really hard to have the self awareness that we're being dishonest with ourselves. But if there is any inkling of that, or that you're doing something and you're saying something else, like time to take a step back, do
Yep.
some journaling about it, talk to someone about it that you trust. That
Yep.
because honesty was a really big dishonesty was a really big pattern. That was something that I really had to peel back and understand the root of before I could um, catch myself and now be honest about these things.
Yeah. Do you think that had it not have been for that book, you wouldn't be where you are today?
Hell no. Hell no. That book, like, oh my God. I would
It's
love
crazy how one person or like a book or something you read can just like, whoa, like,
and what's so funny is that like okay, so Alicia and I are now friends and like we're really tight now. I fucking love her. And I told her about that book. I tell if you know me, like people that are gonna listen to this that know me and that like really know me, like are my friends, not just acquaintances, like you will know what that book is because
yeah.
I tell everyone about it. I buy it for people. Like I I don't want to be preachy, like
No,
but
it's good
I'm
though. Like
preaching about
you,
that book.
that literally changed like the trajectory of your life.
I would not
And
be
so,
like I
yeah,
have this whole new I'm moving and I got this dope job at this cool gym. Oh my god, I have a calf cramp. Sorry. um, I like my friends here I would have never met. I just
yep,
that book, like I have no idea where I would be without it.
yeah,
And that's kind of cool to me that like
yeah.
yeah, I'd love to meet Eckhart Tolle one day. I
Have you
really
read A New Earth, or is that the only book by him
I
that you read?
haven't. I've heard great things about it, but
Yeah,
um,
it is that like was one of the books that like opened my eyes to like a whole different perspective on things, and like it's kind of a mind fuck sometimes. Like some paragraphs I literally had to read over and over again until I could fully
yes,
comprehend it. And I was
that's
like,
like the
oh,
power
that's
of
what he meant.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
Power
awesome.
of Now is written in, I don't know, because like I'm not very like woo spirituality, you know, which is like super cool if you are, but like it's just not my thing. But the way that it's written, there are times when it's like, I don't know what word to use, but just kind of like fluffy, you know, like,
Yeah.
but truly like the lessons in that book, I, yeah, I don't have words for it. Like
Yeah.
it, yeah,
Just gotta go out. I need to get I've heard it's come up in my life multiple times from people like, yeah, I need to get it and read it or like listen to the audio part of it. But yeah, I've heard good things and now you're making me want to for sure like go out and get that.
yeah, do it. You might end up moving somewhere random, you don't know.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, so what would be like if you could summarize like an overarching like lesson that you want someone listening to take away from this, whether they relate to this or it's just like whatever, like what would be like one thing you want someone to take away from your story?
I have two words. The first one is going to be honesty, because I think that if I had been honest with myself the second that I learned that things were not how they should be, my life would be very different. I'm also very like grateful for the things that I went through, but I do believe that like 7-year-old Marlena knew that weighing herself was kind of fucked up,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know what to do about it because I became addicted to it. And
Yeah.
so from the beginning, like, and it genuinely wasn't until this past year or two that I started to really like dive into this idea of brutal honesty. Um,
I feel like though you had to go through all of that shit in order to be honest with yourself because like
I
looking back, I in my head, if I listened to this story when I was younger going through what I was going through, I would be like, yeah, maybe, but I would have that would be like a little like seed planted in my mind for like later on for when I was ready for that. So I just wanted to say that.
I really like that. That yeah, that is so true too, is that I don't feel like I was ready to have this. I mean, I wasn't ready to go back to bodybuilding. I wasn't ready to have these things in front of me, the awareness of them, until this time, until literally right now, you know, like I think things will come to us or make sense when they're meant to make sense. That goes back to that quote that I was talking about.
Yep.
um so honesty, and then the other one is like evolution, and like you are going, and that, I mean, that ties in with it, is like you are going to evolve as a human. I don't believe, something that I really strong like, I very strongly believe that we don't have life purpose, that we create purpose ourselves. And as
I like
you
that.
as you evolve as a human, like all we are is a combination of our past experience, and that is what shapes our mind and how we present, and um our relationships and everything, and then how you unpack or don't unpack, or whatever, all of our experiences, what creates us as humans, and our
Yep.
perspectives. And so your evolution as your like core being and your core self is so, embracing that is so important. And
Yep.
and like that, so you know how I talked about like discipline, dedication, drive, like that was one little thing. Another little pairing of words was like embracing my evolution. Like that
Oh, I
was
like
like
that.
that is so important to me. That's like gonna be my next tattoo.
I was
um
just thinking, I was like, dang, I want to get that as a tattoo. That
Embracing my
is
evolution
so
is like,
good.
I just, and that came to me really young. Like I like those words made a lot of sense at that time, but I felt like, again, I wasn't ready to understand why they were so important to me until
Yeah.
this season of my life. And like, yeah, so that those two, like honesty and evolution, I would say are the two things that sum up that whole experience.
I love that. And like embracing your evolution, like I feel like it is really cool to kind of look back and like see all of the growth and evolution that like I've had. But there's like always these like points in my life where like things happen and I didn't realize it. But like now it's like looking back, I can realize things happened the way they did, either for a reason, whether it was like meeting Kiana or like a friend, or it literally was I needed to go through that in order to like grow and learn so I could do better and be better, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think embracing your evolution, even if you're like going through shit right now, like embracing that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I was actually listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about uh fascination over frustration. And that when you're going through these things, especially for me, like thinking back to my eating disorder recovery time, like I would get so frustrated with myself and be like, God damn it, like I just binged
Mhm.
again, or I just purged again, or I just restricted myself so hard again. Like, why the fuck am I doing it? You know? And then
Yes, I
and then
get it.
but now, like when I not approach, like when these things come up that I would have been frustrated with, I'm like, wait, let me come back into my body, come back into the now, and be fascinated with this this process. And it's a Time Under Tension podcast. They're really cool. Like they just had this whole talk about that, and it was amazing to me of like um just the way that it was explained, and it made so much sense
Yeah.
of like that's such a beautiful way to approach things
Yep.
that you're going through, like of those frustrating times, like become uh fascinated with the process.
Yep. I love that. I've never heard that before. That is such a new like it's a new perspective, but like and I feel like it can help us. I don't know. I feel like that can just help us through a lot of things like
Yeah.
fascination over frustration. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
That's
it
cool.
all circles to me, and like what I believe is it all circles back to that what I learned from that book, which is like truly how to be in the now and
Yeah.
living in the now. And that fascination is sitting back, having the awareness and saying, okay, this is what's
Mhm.
happening. Right now, I'm experiencing this emotion. Again, going back to disconnecting yourself from your thoughts, that I am not my thoughts. I am me
Mhm.
experiencing this thing. So
Right.
so
Yep.
let me be curious and wonder about it instead of
Yes.
mad at it.
Yeah. Like just being the awareness behind the thought.
Yeah, and that is
Yep.
truly what I like attribute to all of my healing from my bodybuilding season one, like
Yeah.
of becoming aware
Mhm.
and now being able to step into this new season of doing some of these same motions of training in a similar way, and of like, I have a protein goal that I hit kind of thing, but
Mhm.
like with with more awareness, so I'm able to feel if I'm reverting back to anything, or
Right.
or,
Yeah.
or if I'm going the opposite way and growing deeper into the what some people call like highest self, or like
Yeah.
the healthiest version of me. What is that? That's
Yes. Yeah.
what it used to be and what I used to think it was.
Yeah, that's yep, because now you can like ask yourself those questions like, am I being the healthiest, highest version of myself? And then also like because of what you went through and the growth that you've had, you do know like when you're more aware of when those red flags come up or when it's not you, you know it's not your highest version of yourself. Um, yeah, so I think that's really cool. I'm gonna take a pause here. We're gonna finish. I just have a lot like a few questions I'm gonna ask you.
Sure.
But I'm just gonna message this guy that I was gonna meet up with. Okay. Um, okay, so I am starting to do this. I don't know if I told you this, but I think I told you there's one question I'm going to ask you at the very end, but actually there's going to be five total now because I'm deciding to do this like rapid fire five question thing here at the end. But before I get into that, I want to talk about your new apparel line quickly. Girl,
Yeah.
yes, tell
Okay.
us all the things.
Circling back just a little bit, brutal honesty. That also really made sense when like coming into my sexuality and understanding myself in that way. Um, and I think I was like late 17, early 18 when I came out. for the second time. There's a little bit back before. But anyways, yeah, so I started Girl Girl Apparel, which is a sapphic clothing line. And my original idea, so kind of started in a funny way. I thought of like a funny bumper sticker, which would be Coochie Bumpers United. And I was just like, that's funny, like that'd be a great bumper sticker. And I was like, oh, let me put that on the hoodie. And then
Yeah.
it kind of became this like, oh wait, like there's no, not that that's subtle at all, but aside from that, like there's no uh like queer femme apparel that isn't super loud and like isn't full of
Yeah.
rainbows and that kind of thing. And so I wanted to make something that was kind of like following current trends, but then like queerify it. And also just like that was a huge part of understanding myself. And there were so many breadcrumbs left for myself growing up, you know, before I realized. And that's another part of honesty, that like there were moments, I remember I had like a high school boyfriend that was probably 15 or something, and I literally would like tell him all, like show him girls that I found hot and like use that word, and I still didn't connect the dots, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's another part of honesty, is that like my sexuality was so obvious, but I it, you know, wasn't honest with myself, I guess.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so that apparel line has been super fun. I'm gonna be making some new designs. My sister's helping me out with
Yay.
some artists. Um, and yeah, so it's just girlgirlapparel.com, and we have an Instagram for it too. But yeah, that's been a fun side project,
Yep.
that I've had, that like I think it's gonna be that kind of thing that I you know, I work on it a lot, have a launch, great, come down a little bit, focus on other work, come back up. But it is always there to
Yep.
look at. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I can't wait for new stuff to come out. I mean, I love what I got now, but I'm always excited to get more. And it's just, yeah, it's good. I've never like seen, like you said, like I've never seen anything where it's like not rainbows and it's like on trend and it's just like catchy and just cool. Yeah. So it's really cool what you're doing. I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's been, that is like a fun thing to do that had nothing to do with fitness. And I felt like I needed something um to be a creative outlet that like that didn't have to do with cook. I love to cook, and that's like a way that I can be creative. But like to me, um, food is just like I'm obviously like my relationship with it is so much better, and it's
Yeah.
now, but it's still like I just wanted something that had nothing to do with any of
Fitness,
my,
health.
and this is like such a fun creative project that I was able to learn a lot of new skills in, and also like support gay women.
Yeah. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, so 5 questions to end today. Number 1, and just, I mean, whatever comes to mind, you
Okay.
can answer with. Okay, so number 1, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, uh, got your caffeine.
Yeah, that's okay. Yep, that's true. That's
That's
true.
the first thing that comes to my mind.
I'm working on the mindset of that. Like, I know I need to cut down on coffee and caffeine and Starbucks. Like, I get it. Kiana's probably listening. She's like, yeah, like she's trying to get me to do that too. But it's like I need to do it for me, and I need to want to, and I want to do it, but it's just a habit. It's just hard. But yeah, I'm like working on getting out of the mindset of feeling like I need a coffee all the time. So, number 2, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh God, probably take 2 capsules of yohimbine before an hour and a half of fasted cardio at
Oh
15
God.
years old.
Is that like a fat loss pill or something?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it can be used in a fine way. Like it's not inherently a
Yeah.
bad thing. But I think it's actually used as like a male sexual enhancement thing.
Oh geez.
That was an interesting experience.
And
It
was it that coach that told you to do that?
was the first coach, yeah.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
first like through bodybuilding prep coach. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Red flag if a coach is telling you to take a fat loss pill before intermittent fasting cardio. fat loss pill in general, even, I would say. Okay, number 3, I think I already know the answer to this, but what would be your favorite book, podcast, audio, like mentor person that you like
Yeah.
to listen to or whatever?
Eckhart Tolle by far is like number one. Um, there are some great podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Grow or Die is a really cool bodybuilding one, but there's a lot of other like nuggets in there that can be applied to life in general. And then Time Under Tension is really new, but it's actually what is her name? Why can't I remember her name? Her Instagram's Old Soul Made New, but she is a I mean she's an IFBB pro that doesn't bodybuild anymore, and her story is fascinating and really beautiful. Also, 2 gay women that are together run it, which is so
Oh,
fun.
cute.
So
That's awesome. Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get a little list from you and then I'll link that too for anyone who wants to listen to those podcasts.
I'm good.
Number 4, what has been one of the most impactful lessons that you've ever learned?
Man, I feel like they talked about this, but
Yeah.
learning what real, like truly awareness is and what it feels like, and then brutal honesty and marrying those 2 things,
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
think
good.
is the biggest. And then also like if you need a therapist and professional help, like do it. I think therapy is so important, and I have been putting off looking for a new one lately, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of reminding myself that I should, you know.
Yep.
I think like those are things that I really have been able to explore with other people, and
And I think even if you don't think you need a therapist, if you've never been to one, to try it out. Because I do have a friend who she recently told me that she's like, I didn't realize how much I needed a therapist.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's just, yeah, I
Awesome.
agree. Yep. Um, okay, and then the last one. So this podcast called Flow with the Grow. When you hear flow with the grow, what does that mean? What does that mean for you?
I really connect that with that pairing of words, embracing my evolution. I think those kind of have, in my mind, similar messages that float the grow. You're gonna our whole life we are growing. I used to get so frustrated with thinking that I'd get frustrated with being in constant transition. And I'm like, why do I feel like I can't just sit still? Or like things are changing all the time, things are happening to me, and it's like, wait, let's sit back and like I'm just along for the ride. Like that's just what life is, constantly growing. Life is constantly transitioning and evolving. And if we can just flow with it and go, do our
Yep.
thing, like that's what I believe is gonna be, that's what happiness is being able to be present and sit with it and be along for the ride. And like
I love
good
that.
good and bad, does that exist? I don't know. It's just accept
It
it.
is.
That is what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Yep, I love that. I love how you said like that it like is happiness too, because I feel like people are always like, well, I gotta search for happiness or find happiness, but like
Happiness.
happiness comes from within, and like yeah, and it's just like the evolution of it flowing with the growth of life, like that's just happiness too, or it
Yeah.
can be. Mhm.
Yeah.
All depends on how you look at it. That's always what I say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's all that I had. Do you have any last like words or anything that you want to share? Anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to share?
I mean, like, I could tell, like, that story could go on for 5 hours, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think, like, what I want to say is if you are struggling with any of the similar things that I talked about, or if that planted a seed and there's something there, but you're scared to explore it, it's okay to take your time, but just give yourself the space to be able to think about it, whether that's literally giving yourself the space sitting alone in silence for 10 minutes and letting thoughts come up however they are, or like that's journaling, or if that's talking to someone and just putting it out there and becoming aware that those are some issues that are present. Like be honest with
Yep.
yourself, like allow yourself to feel the feelings, and it's okay for you know, like these issues started at 7 years old for me, and I'm 21 now. And like it took me until this year to be brutally real. And now that I am, it feels incredible. But like, how many years is that? Meant a
Right.
lot of years, you know. So it's okay that
That's
it takes time, but the sooner that you can um have that awareness and honesty with yourself, then the sooner you're gonna feel better.
yeah.
I
And be
feel
at peace and like feel free. Like your
yeah,
your story, it's very different, but also it's very similar to mine. And I just it also took me years. And I feel like just I thought it was last year, but I feel like just this year is the year where I have like true peace and freedom with my body and exercise and food and like the seasons of change. And like I mean, for me it started in high school, and now I mean that was in probably 2009, 2008, something like that, and it's 2023 now. So like it does take time, and I think like just like knowing that slow growth is still growth. And like just yeah, I mean it'll take time. It's not like it's gonna be overnight. Obviously for either of us it wasn't. So
yeah.
but yeah, patience.
Patience,
Mhm.
patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah,
Yep.
but
And
I
turning
am.
that frustration to fascination.
Messages are open if anyone needs it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome. Also, first I just want to say thank you for coming on and sharing your story, being super just like vulnerable, putting yourself out there, being just an open book. Like I appreciate it. And if anyone is listening and they relate to you or they want to reach out to you, can they contact you? Where can they find you?
yeah. My Instagram is marmuscle, 2 R's, MARR muscle. Um, and I'd say that's the best one.
Yeah.
DMs are
Okay.
open. Yep.
I will
TikTok
link
is
that.
also a thing. That's in my
Yes.
bio. But yeah,
Awesome.
I'd love to talk to anyone that wants to talk. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank
I
you
will
so
link
much.
that too.
It's such a good
Heck
chat.
yeah. I'm sure. I mean, honestly, someday we could do this again once there's been another evolution in your story, because I think it'd be super cool to like talk more as, a few years from now, whatever that is. If I'm still doing this, who knows? I don't know. We'll see where life takes us. But yeah.
Sounds
So
great. Thank you
all
so
right.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you again. I appreciate you. And we will chat soon.
Sounds good.
All
Have a
right.
good
Bye.